If you're reading through Second Kings, you probably can relate to what I'm going to say today, which is it starts to get a little confusing, frankly, because the kings are dropping like flies. I mean, kings are dying or being killed left and right. And in Second Kings chapter 9, though, we have the follow-up of something that had happened previously. If you've been watching, you may recall that I shared a devotional when Ahab, King Ahab of Israel, and Jezebel basically conspired because they wanted Naboth's vineyard, which abutted their property, and Naboth would not give up his ancestral land. And so Ahab had him murdered. And the prophet warned Ahab that there was going to be a price to pay for this. And that price comes due in 2 Kings chapter 9. In 2 Kings chapter 9, Elisha calls this young prophet and gives him almost a suicide mission. He tells him to go to a man named Jehu and to go in and anoint him and tell him, anoints him with oil and says, guess what? You're now the king of Israel and you need to get Ahab's son, basically. And so then he runs for his life. And then we have this confrontation between Joram, who is the son of Ahab and Jezebel, and Jehu and King Ahaziah of Judah. And they meet them at the land that had been Naboth's, and basically this is God's vengeance on Ahab and his family, and Joram is killed. And verse 26 says, for the blood of Naboth and for the blood of his children that I saw yesterday, says the Lord, I swear I will repay you on this very plot of ground. So that's what had been said, and now that is come to fruition. And then the verse continues, now therefore lift him out and throw him on the plot of ground in accordance with the word of the Lord. I often try to emphasize the grace and mercy and the love of God, but there is also the justice side of God that we have to remember and can't ignore. And part of what we see in this story in 2 Kings chapter 9 is that God does make things right in God's time and in God's way. And just as Romans 12, where Paul says, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Sometimes that takes the form of hospitality, like in the story of Elisha and the Arameans that I preached on last week. But sometimes that vengeance means that somebody pays with their life because of their violence and their bloodshed. We worship a God who is a God of grace and mercy, but also a God of justice and holiness, and we want to live in a way that pleases our God.